Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire supported by Glenlivet Books. An article across the back page of the Business Standard this morning has created a storm of controversy. Written by the strategic affairs editor of the paper, the article says there's been at least one clash between Indian and Chinese forces in Galwan, and also that the Chinese have started to renege on the demilitarization agreement reached between both countries in February for the Pangong Lake area. There's a lot more in the article, and the army has in fact responded with an angry rebuttal. This morning, the army has claimed the article is riddled with inaccuracies and misinformation. It goes on to claim that the article is false and baseless. More pertinently, the army says, attacking Colonel Shukla, the author, directly, the intention of the reporter is mala fide and not based on any truth. Joining me this morning to talk about his article and also to respond to the Army's statement is the author, the Strategic Affairs Editor of the Business Standard, Colonel Ajai Shukla. Colonel Shukla, let me start with what you've written separately, but after that, I'll come to what the Army has said in response. Now, first, in that Business Standard article, you say there's been at least one clash between the two sides on the Galwan River, close to where 20 Indian soldiers were killed on June the 15th last year. When exactly did this clash happen, and what more can you tell me about it?
Well, from what I understand, and let me start by saying and making it absolutely clear right up front, that I get my information, like all journalists do, from sources. I make sure that those sources are credible, are authentic, and then I cross-verify them with at least one more source, and only then do I actually go and publish a story. So the Army's contentions about malified intent and so on, I think it's best for me not to address those. I wish the Army well. I wish that they manage to negotiate a mutual withdrawal and disengagement, and that no further casualties take place. Now, that having been said, what my sources have told me about this clash in the Galwan Valley is that it was very similar to circumstances in which, on the 15th of June last year, a clash took place between Indian troops and resulting in the deaths of 20 Indian soldiers and an unspecified number of Chinese soldiers. This time, again, there was some construction activity by the Chinese. This is one sector which, for the benefit of our viewers, it would be worth mentioning that a 3-kilometer disengagement zone on either side has been arrived at between the Chinese and the Indian commanders. There are a specified number. 30 soldiers from each side can remain in a tented camp 1.4 kilometers from a mutually decided point, and another 50 soldiers in another 1.6 kilometers. So it's been very sort of meticulously cut out and specified, and I'm talking about the disengagement. But again, the Chinese appear to have violated that disengagement point. They appear to have entered into territory where they were not supposed to go, and that led to the clash. What the circumstance, or I should say the casualties that took place, I am not aware of, and my article says that I'm not aware of that. But the clash took place according to at least two very authentic sources.
Very quickly, you say you're not aware of casualties. Does that mean there could have been casualties, but you just don't know? Or are you saying there were none at all?
I'm saying there could have been casualties and we just don't know. You remember, we are still not aware of the Chinese casualty count in last year's clash that took place. So these are things that are still very murky and we're not aware of them. My sources were not aware of the number of casualties, but he did not say that there were no casualties at all.
Does that mean there could have been casualties on the Indian side as well? Because you have left that possibility open.
Yes, there could have theoretically been casualties on the Indian side, but it is very sort of difficult for the army and for the government to hide the casualty count. If they were just sort of minor scrapes and bruises and so on, that can be hidden. But anything that it approaches serious injury or death of a soldier, the Indian side cannot hide it. They're normally quite transparent about such things. The Chinese, on the other hand, are good at hiding these things.
When did this clash in the Galwan area happen? Do you have a rough date?
I don't have a rough date. I've got a specific date, 2nd of May.
Sorry, could you say that again?
The 2nd of May.
Okay, because that date is not in your Business Standard article.
Well, that's the date that is sort of told to me by my sources.
And you say that the clash happened when PLA soldiers were setting up a tent at the bend of the Galwan River near PP-14. India demanded that it be removed because it was in the buffer area. I take it the Chinese were reluctant to do so, and that is what led to the clash.
Exactly right, Karan.
Now, the second thing you write in that Business Standard article, and I'm going to quote, you say the PLA has apparently flouted the February 2021 demilitarization agreement, which had envisioned a mutual withdrawal of troops on the Pangong sector. And then you specifically add that on the south bank of Pangong Lake, Chinese troops have reportedly reoccupied the positions on the Kailash range, such as Blacktop and Helmet, which they had vacated. In other words, the Chinese have reneged and gone back on the demilitarization that was agreed in February. Are you absolutely sure of this? Because this is another serious worrying development if true.
As I mentioned earlier, I am absolutely sure of it to the extent that my sources are absolutely sure of it. They have given absolute specific details about where the Chinese have come in. They have mentioned that the Chinese found it easy to breach the demilitarized agreement because they have built roads over time. They can use vehicles to quickly enter into Indian territory, do what they have to, establish presence, and then leave again. So this is a sort of it's very difficult for me to say no. I don't know. I am absolutely 100% sure of this. I am 100% sure to the extent that my sources are telling me that this is what has happened.
I want to pick up on something your sources said to you. They said to you that the Chinese found it very easy to breach the demilitarization agreement. Does that suggest or hint at some laxity on the part of India?
There is no laxity that can be sort of pinpointed to the current round of events that is taking place. Whatever inequality or inequity there is between India and China in this Ladakh sector goes back years, even decades. Over this time period, China has built up infrastructure, they have built up roads, they have built up tracks, they have built up dumping areas for their artillery ammunition, places for deploying their air defense. So this has been a long playing game, Karan. Over the years, China has established a certain local superiority in this area, and that allows them to quickly sort of gain an advantage. And that's what happens. When that advantage is taken, then you are always at a moral ascendancy over the other side.
Now, thirdly, you write in that Business Standard article, and again I'm quoting, the PLA has deployed at least one, probably two regiments of S-400 air defense missiles, which would drastically erode India's superiority in air power. Once again, if true, this is a very serious development because it tilts the balance and the advantage to the Chinese very significantly. But is this true? Are you sure of it?
Once again, my sources are very sure of it. They specifically mention that they are sure about one regiment, and the second was sort of in the process of moving up and could possibly have been deployed already. While this does interfere with the balance of power, air power I'm talking about now, It is to be noted that the balance of air power was India's side all along, by virtue of being able to take off from airfields that are at low altitudes. They are able to carry larger loads, larger payloads, larger fuel, and therefore increasing both their range and their striking power. That is the advantage that has now been eroded. I do not say that the advantage is now entirely China's way, but I am saying that the advantage that India enjoyed has now been severely eroded by the deployment of these two regiments of very capable missiles.
Absolutely, which is why this news, if it's correct, that China has deployed one, maybe two regiments of S-400, is worrying. And I should add for the audience, this is precisely the missile system that India presently is negotiating with the Russians to itself acquire, but we haven't as yet got the S-400. Now, finally, you say, and again, I'm going to quote you, in the first week of April 2021, Chinese drones began entering Indian airspace in large numbers. Then you add, and again I'm quoting, in mid-May, the PLA began reoccupying many of the positions that have been vacated. Now, if you're right, these two sentences suggest that the problem in Ladakh began 3 months ago in the first week of April. That's when the Chinese began stepping up, intruding into Indian airspace, occupying positions that had been vacated. So this now is a 3-month-old problem.
Oh, yes. And the pattern, Karan, closely follows or tracks the pattern of last year's intrusions and events. It was in April that the Indian side began picking up Chinese movement last year. It was in May when the Chinese actually physically moved into Indian territory. All through April, May, and the first half of June, the Indian government denied that anything had happened and that any encroachments had taken place. And it was on the 15th of June last year that the unfortunate death of 20 Indian soldiers made it impossible for the government to deny any longer. This year, it's uncanny. It was in April that the drones first began showing their presence. It was in May that the clash took place and the Chinese soldiers entered Indian territory. And now in June and July, the government is still denying that anything has taken place and saying that all is well. If all is well, I welcome that. But I then wonder why they are continuing to hold dialogues, why they're continuing to negotiate with the Chinese, why senior Indian officials, including the defense minister, are visiting Ladakh and talking up encouragement to the troops. The government is saying one thing and doing another.
As you point out, there's a sense in which if the story you've told with the business standard is correct, that history is uncannily repeating itself again. Now, for the April and May developments, you quote unnamed Ministry of Defense sources. For the S-400, you quote unnamed military sources. So does this mean that you've actually been told this by people who are in the know?
Oh, yes. One cannot report this story without talking to people who are there on the ground itself. Unless you have a certain presence, physical presence, you're always then secondhand sort of information you're passing on. I would put it to you that in an area as remote as Eastern Ladakh, it would be easy to say, well, who could be talking to you from over there? But the fact is, there is the army over there deployed. There is the ITBP that is deployed over there. There are any number of intelligence agencies deployed over there. The information comes from all of these sources, and many of them are alarmed and worried about what is happening. There's a palpable sense of apprehension on the ground over there that all of them talk about. And they are the ones who then sort of feel emboldened to cast aside the restrictions. And there are heavy restrictions on everybody over there from talking to the media. They put those restrictions aside and still give information.
However, Ajai Shukla, you don't mention any source for the claim that there's been a clash in Galwan. And you've just told me that clash happened on the 2nd of May. That date wasn't in the Business Standard article. But there's no source, as far as I can tell, mentioned for the claim that a clash between the two country soldiers happened in Galwan on the 2nd of May.
Sometimes your sources are so sensitively placed that it's better not to mention where they come from. That is the case in this case.
Okay. Now, the army, as I said in the introduction, has rebutted you with a statement very angrily. Their statement, I'm talking now of the army statement, says the article is riddled with inaccuracies and misinformation. It says your claim that agreements with the Chinese have collapsed is false and baseless. How do you respond to that? Because this is a very strong rebuttal.
It is a very strong rebuttal, but I would note and I would draw to your attention that while they say that the article is riddled with factual inaccuracies, they don't actually mention any of the factual inaccuracies. They do not deny that there are S-400 batteries there. They don't deny that there's a Chinese brigade that is built up to the rear of Pangong. So they don't deny a large number of specifics that I offer in my article. So I think the army is rebutting this in the language and the tone of the government in general. I don't think the army itself would have framed out this thing. It is no secret that every army soldier who is deployed in that area is under strict instructions not to talk to the media. So there's a sort of a blanket, a pall that has been cast over the entire army deployment over there. And I would not go too far in taking this rebuttal seriously. It's an old hackneyed joke that no story is proven correct until it's officially rebutted. And in that sense, I would say that the government has done exactly that.
I note the point you make that whilst the army says your story is riddled with inaccuracies, they haven't pointed out a single inaccuracy, nor have they commented, leave aside, denied your claim that one regiment, possibly two regiments of the S-400 missiles have been positioned by the Chinese in Ladakh. I note that, I'm simply repeating it so the audience can remember that point. However, the army statement goes further. It says, and again I'm quoting, there's been no attempt by either side to occupy the areas from where the disengagement has been undertaken. That is a specific rebuttal of your claim that the Chinese have reoccupied positions on the Kailash range which they had vacated, like Helmet and Blacktop. How do you respond to that?
Oh, I would welcome that. I hope the army is correct in what they say. I hope that I am proven wrong. But so far, through the development of this entire incident, starting from April last year, through May, through June, the army was denying there was any intrusions at all. The army we all know that this was at the instance of the Prime Minister's office. The army denied it. The army had to come clean when 20 Indian soldiers were killed. And even at that stage, they were denying that any prisoners had been taken. And later on, it turned out that 10 people had been taken prisoner. So I would only put to you that my sources have so far proven to be better providers of information than the government, the Ministry of Defense, and the army.
So you're sticking by what your sources told you, that the Chinese have reneged on their Pangong So demilitarization and gone back and occupied areas on the Kailash range like Helmet and Blacktop. You're sticking to what your sources told you, despite the fact the army has strongly denied it. Just give me a confirmatory yes or no.
Yes and yes.
Now, the army has also specifically denied your big claim, which is the headline in the Business Standard story, that there was a clash, as you said, on the 2nd of May between Indian and Chinese soldiers in Galwan. This is what the army statement says. There have been no clashes in Galwan or any other area.
Yes, that's exactly what we've been talking about, Karan. The army is denying that. My sources verify that. And last year, my sources proved that the information they were giving was worth listening to, because these are sources which have a certain track record in providing correct information. The army, I'm sorry to say, probably at the instance of the Ministry of Defense, is just sort of denying things without adequate cause.
My last question. The army statement also seems to personally attack you, your intentions, and if I can so put it, your credibility and integrity. This is what it says. The intention of the reporter is mala fide and not based on any truth. How do you respond to this claim your intention is mala fide?
Well, I must say that they know a great deal about what my intentions are. I would say that I'm not questioning their intentions and their integrity. What we're having right here is a battle of freedom of the press. The job of a journalist to provide information duly vetted to the public at large. This is something that the army and the government in general should also be doing. But as we saw all of last year, this is exactly what they're not doing. Instead, they're casting slurs at people who are attempting to bring out the truth. I would just sort of ignore what they're saying and continue talking to my sources, getting information, and providing it to the public of this country.
This morning's Times of India claims that there will be a meeting later today, Wednesday, in Dushanbe on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation meeting between Indian Foreign Minister Jai Shankar and the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. If the Times of India claim that these two foreign ministers are going to meet is correct, do you expect that everything that you've written, the clash in Galwan, the Chinese reneging on the demilitarization in Pangong, the positioning of the S-400 missiles, do you think all of this will be brought up at that meeting?
No, I absolutely don't think it'll come up in that meeting. The Chinese have refused flatly so far to discuss most of these issues. They've done a token sort of withdrawal, mutual withdrawal from one sector. They still remain ensconced in all the other places to some degree or the other. And the Chinese are in the happy position of the Indian government repeating what the Chinese government is saying. The Chinese government says that no Chinese have been encroached into India. The Indian government, instead of saying no, they have, and we will throw them out, dutifully parrots what the Chinese government is saying. So I think they'll probably shake hands and smile at each other today and say, well, the information flow is going very well.
In other words, if the Indian government takes the position taken by the army in that statement, that there has been no clash, there has been no transgression, that the reports are inaccurate, that they are false, and that in fact your intention is mala fide, if that is the position of the Indian government, then there's nothing to discuss between the Indian foreign minister and the Chinese, nothing at all. Isn't that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. If the situation is so hunky-dory on the border, then there's no sort of clashes, no occupation, no return to positions that have been vacated. Why are they pursuing another round of military commanders' talks? Why are they pursuing the dialogue?
The reason they're pursuing another round of army commanders' talks is because we know, and the government officially has repeatedly accepted and admitted, that after Pangong Tso, there has been no further de-escalation in Depsam, in the other areas like Hot Spring and Gogra and Temchok. That's why the talks are happening. That's why those talks continue. But you've raised a different issue. You've raised, in fact, new clashes at Galwan. You raised reneging of the Pangong Tso demilitarization. You've raised the S-400. Those are different.
To be fair to the Chinese, they are at perfect liberty to deploy S-400s and other artillery guns and weapons and ammunition on their side of the line of actual control. The point of contention over here is the crossing of the line of actual control. And if, as the Indian government is steadfastly maintained through 3 months, last year, April, May, and June, if as the Indian government maintained at that time that there was no crossing of the line of control, then what's to discuss? It's exactly the same point that keeps coming up, that the two governments are actually finding themselves in agreement to a very remarkable degree.
All right, I take your point. Karan Shukla, thank you very much for speaking to me, for discussing in detail the article you wrote on the back page of the Business Standard, and also for responding to that sharp rebuttal and the personal criticism you face from the army in the statement. And the important thing you will
Got it,
reveal
Dr.
to me, because it wasn't in your Business Standard article, is that that clash in Galwan happened on the 2nd of May. Theoretically, you say it's possible there could have been Indian casualties, although you add, if they were serious, they would be hard to hide. But minor injuries may well have happened and could be hidden as well. And we don't know about any casualties on the Chinese side. Thank you very much indeed. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you, Karan. Thanks.